Yep. Good morning, everyone. So yesterday we learned about template forms and their validation, right? So we discussed about how to validate the template forms. We learned form state validation services. In that we have pristine, we have dirty, valid, invalid, submitted. These are form state validation services. We have input state validation services. Input state validation services we have. So we have touched, we have untouched. So we have same pristine, we have dirty, we have valid, we have invalid, errors. These are the options. I showed you what is difference. Form state validation is going to verify all fields. Input state validation to verify every individual field. But in that every individual field, one more problem is there. If we use valid and invalid, it will verify all problems and report same problem. Means report same error. That means for every error, it will have same message to show. If there are many error validations to write, then better now we can go with another concept, that is what? Errors. Actually, so Angular have errors object. Angular is having an errors object. It is having an errors object. Now, actually, errors object, it can identify specific error, specific validation error in input element and report the relative error message. This is what actually error object can do. Actually, up to Angular 13, it is just a jQuery JavaScript object. It is just a JavaScript object with validation properties. Validation properties means like this: errors dot required, like errors dot min length, like errors dot pattern. All these are up to Angular 13. It was like this. But from Angular 14 and in 15, in Angular 15, so in 15, so validation errors object changed into an array, of error validations. It changed into an array of validations. Actually, earlier it was only object. Now it became an error of validations. Actually, which is optional type. Actually, we call as nullable type, which is nullable type. Nullable means question mark, na? It is nullable type. That means now from Angular 15 and 14, from 14 and 15 versions, errors is an optional type, and it is an array. It is an array type which contains required. So which contains like errors, which contains like pattern like this. So it changed a little bit. That means now it is min length. Like this, it is defined. Earlier it is different, now it is different. Logically same concept, but the way of presenting and referring is different now. So from Angular 14 and 15 version, it changed. Error object changed. So this error object is not just a direct key and value. It is an array of errors. And it is a nullable type. Actually, earlier it is not a nullable type. Now it is a nullable type. Nullable type means you need to put a question mark, right? So generally, why we need these errors, I will tell you reasonable concept. Why I need to show here. Suppose see now, here in this current page, I will keep it very, very simple for you. Okay. Let me clean this all first. Means just I will write what you have learned yesterday. Okay, currently it is empty. Let's put here a simple form. And here I will keep class margin top 2. This form is referred as hash FRM register, and it is what? ng form. Okay, here we define, so register user heading. In this, we have a data list and a data term. And here we defined user name. For that, we will put a text box. Input type is text. We will make it template driven. Template driven means we have to use a name. Name is what? Username. We need to define ng model. Hash username is ng model. It becomes a template driven. And now I will just put a button here. So register. So class BTN primary. Okay, now I want to set some validations for this text box. And the validation I am giving required. Required indicates it is mandatory. Another I am giving min length. Min length how much? Some 4 characters. Minimum 4 characters length. That is what I am defining. Now what should happen here is, so when you are dealing with this now, technically how to show error message. First, how to verify is it valid or not. To verify valid or not, so we are using a data definition. Here we will put a class text danger. And here we are keeping a message. Now tell me which message I have to display. Required message or min length message? Both are validations only, na? Both are validations. And suppose I said username invalid, okay? And when this should display, write the condition ng if. When it should display, when username dot what? Invalid. When username invalid. Yesterday we learned some condition also. That means what you do is FRM register dot what? Submitted, and it is invalid. So if it is invalid, it should display username invalid. Now you can see here, I click on register button, then it says username invalid. Now the question is, what is invalid? That means what is the problem? So suppose I am typing here some name, it is still saying invalid. That means I am not sure what it is invalid. Right? Because invalid will return true on any error. Name, length error problem, name, required problem, name, pattern problem. For every purpose, it will show same message. That is not good. We need to classify the messages. We need to cleanly classify the messages. How? Let's see now. To classify the messages, what you have to do is here, if username is invalid, it will come to display some messages. Now here I will put messages. How to display messages? I will put one div. This contains username required. I will put another message. This is username too short. So minimum 4 characters required like this. And I suppose there is another one. What is it? Max length. If it is max length is 10. Then it should display another one. What is it? So here username too long. So max what? Max 10 characters only. Now here the point is when to display. Now I click register. It shows all of them. But this message should come when required problem occurred. This message should come when min length problem occurred. In that case, what we want to do is when it is invalid, it have to display these messages. And again, these messages have a filter. What is that filter? So here, first message should display ng if. It should display when username dot errors. Errors now from new version onwards, it is a nullable type. Nullable type, and it have a property array. And that array property have the validation names. Validation name, if it is what? Required, that is validation. If username errors is required, if that is required error, then show this message. Then means automatically this returns true. It returns true if the text box username is having which error? Required. Similarly, when should second div should display? Ng if, what is it? Username errors. Errors dot. What is it? Min length. Remember, this required min length, these are reserved keywords. You cannot write in your own style. Exactly how I written there. That means capitalizations, everything matters. So now another one. What is the next one? So here we are defining what is it? Ng if. What is it? Username dot errors. Errors dot what? Max length. That is for username. So suppose I am writing another field, another data term, some mobile. So we have input type is equal to text. Now mobile is required and mobile have a pattern. Pattern is /+91 and /d 10 digits number. That is a pattern for mobile. That means it should start with +91 and should have 10 digit number. Now I am defining what is it. So one is we have to make it dynamic na ng model and hash what. So mobile is equal to ng model. So name is what? Mobile. Now what are the errors to display for this? Data definition. Now here 2 error messages we want. One error message is what? Mobile. Required. Another message is invalid mobile. So +91 and 10 digits. This message should come. Now when this block should display, when that entire block should display, this block have a color. Class, what is it? Text danger. When this block should display, When mobile is invalid, that means I will use ng if. So I will use ng if, and in this I will write condition is frm register dot submitted, and what mobile dot what invalid. If a mobile is invalid, then it will come to this block. In this block, when to display first message, ng if, it should display when mobile have errors. What type of error it is? Required error. And when this should display, we have to use ng if. So mobile dot errors, this should be which error? Pattern error. That is pattern. Now that is how we need to configure. Now let's see here. Now we have this, and I click on register. It says username required, mobile required. Because currently required pattern is not satisfied. It is not showing all messages now. I will start typing inside it. Then it says name too short. Minimum 4 characters required. I entered minimum 4 characters. Now it is fine. I am entering more than 10 characters. Then it should display again message. But actually max length not required, because max length is already restricted. It will not allow to type more than 10 characters. That's good. If any element is not allowing, then you can write max length error also, you can define. As of now, you don't need to worry, because it can never happen, because it will not allow to type at all. Right now you see I remove this and it says minimum 4 characters required. I remove those 3 characters also. It says required. So this is okay. Now mobile. I am entering mobile. I said plus. So it says mobile invalid. It should start with 91. It should contain a 10-digit number, right? So that means I am entering 8. So 7, 6, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10-digit number. If anything is not matching, it will display. So this is related to pattern, and this is related to required. It have the validation for both of them. So this is there in earlier versions also, but from new version, lot of changes. From the new version, errors object is not a direct object with properties. It is an object with a collection of validations. So you need to access the validations in this way, and you have to display. Now here, this is okay. This is fine. We can write any type of validations like that. But what is problem is, in many interviews they ask, do you know custom validation? Custom validation is compulsory. We need custom validation regularly. Why we need custom validation? Because the validations that you are writing, they are not suitable for every element. For example, you designed a drop down. In a drop down, user have to select one item. So for example, let's create a drop down. So I am using a data term, and here I said city. And when I said city and data definition, so here I will put a drop down select. And here I will just give, in this select, we have an option. The first option I will give as select your city. Select your city. That is the first one. After that, second option is Delhi. And next option is Hyderabad, like this. Now I will mark it as ng model, and hash city is equal to ng model. Name is equal to city. Now important here is when user is selecting here. When user is not selecting a city, that means user is selecting the first one. If user is selecting the first one, it should say, please select city, because first one is not a city. So it should display, please select your city. Now, how we can handle this? Can I put required for this? You can't put required for this. Why? Because even you put required, how it knows that first one is not a city? Because first one also option only, second one also option, third one also option. All are designed by options. It cannot know that first one is not a city. It thinks that even first one is also a city, because all are considered as what? Options. You cannot give required for this. Then how? You cannot give required for this. Then how to verify? How to verify that they selected a city or not? For radios, for checkboxes, for drop downs, list boxes, you can't use required. You cannot use patterns like that. So these are the elements for whom you cannot use HTML validations. So we have to write validations manually. That means actually several HTML elements cannot use HTML5 validations, because HTML5 validations are new from HTML5 version. They are new. So HTML5 validations are not suitable for several HTML elements. So then what you have to do? Then you have to configure validations using custom functions. You have to create your own functions and validate. People call these as custom validations. In many interviews, they ask, do you know custom validations? It is not a complicated concept. Custom validation is nothing but it is not validating. We are validating manually. That means for every validation, they don't have a service. For every validation, they don't have a service. Just like already we learned pipes. For every purpose, they don't have a pipe. Then what we have to do? We have to create our own pipes. Similarly, for every validation, they don't have service. They have only few services which you can use. And you want some validation which is not provided as a service, then you have to write your own validation. Then how to write? We know. How to write now? I have to use a simple approach like this. First thing, we need to declare one property. We will create a property here. We will create one property. So public. So that is city error. City error is a string type. Initially, it is empty. It is not having anything. Now we will write one method, public city changed. City changed, it is expecting an event argument. Event argument of what type? Any. And this is a method. It is what type? Void. It is a method which is expecting. So this void is not required. Even you don't define, by default it is considered as void on. Right? Now what is the point here is this city changed should fire up when user is changing the city. That means what we will do here, we have to use change city changed. Into that we will pass $event. You know, $event passes event arguments. Through that event argument, you can select the values. Now, for every option, we will give value. First option value is Delhi. Second option value is Hyderabad. And the first option value, we will give -1. You can give any name. You can give like not a city, not city. But -1 is a traditional programming approach in an array. When you're looking for any element and if it is not found, it will return -1. I hope you know last index of functions are there. In array, when you are searching for any element in a collection, when you are searching for any element and it is not available, then it is going to return -1. For that tradition, I just used -1. That means -1 means they haven't selected any city. That means first one is not a city. So we will treat it as not a part of cities collection. So what will happen now? Here we will collect the value. So we will simply collect the value. If E dot target dot, we learned how to access object properties. Event properties we can directly access. Object properties we have to access by using target. If E dot target dot value is equal to -1. -1 is a string type. It's not a number, right? And if it is -1, this dot city error should display. So please select your city. This message should come. Please select your city. This message should come. Otherwise, this dot city error should be empty. It should not display any message. It should be empty. Now this city error we will attach here. Below this we will put a data definition, and here we will display the city error. And here I will just put a class text danger and text danger, and here we will give an option. This is city error. So here we will keep city error. Now what happens here, you can see I am entering some name. So okay, and I am entering some mobile. I am selecting a city. It's okay. I am not selecting a city. It shows please select your city. And I am selecting one city. Now it is fine. I am not selecting a city, then it will display. That is a simple approach. Manually you have to write. You cannot have automatic validation, and there are no validation services for such things. Then we need to manually write the validations and verify. A lot of such validations you have to manually write, because validation services are not available for every type of validation in HTML. And of course, HTML don't have all validations. We have to manually configure and define them. This is one very important. We generally call these as what? Custom validation. Custom validation. So you can use any complex. I hope if you have learned your JavaScript patterns and all, for every reason, suppose password must be 4 to 15 characters with at least one uppercase letter. Such validations and all you can write by using pattern. Patterns are used for handling that, right? Such validations are defined by using pattern. For example, roughly, because if you have learned JavaScript, you know patterns how to write. Suppose this is password, and we will put a data definition. Input type is equal to password, and here name is password and ng model, and hash password is ng model. Password is required, and another one is password is having a pattern, and pattern for password is so question mark equal dot star square brace a hyphen z slash w and 4,10. This indicates password must be alphanumeric, can be alphanumeric with at least one uppercase letter. That is how generally we write the patterns. These all patterns you will learn in HTML and general JavaScript. What are meta characters? You know, na? They are called meta characters and quantifiers, right? Now this is the pattern to verify. Okay. Now here we will put a message. When to add this message, we will use ng if. This message should display when frm register dot what submitted and what. So password is what? Invalid. You can write multiple conditions also. No? This is one condition, or yesterday we written that. Or what? Password dot what? Touched. Password dot touched and password dot what? Invalid. Then it should display. On submit on touch. Here you will have two errors. What are that error? One is password required is one. Another one we will put here class text danger. Okay. So this is password required. Another one. So password I will define 4 to 15 characters. So chars with at least one uppercase letter. This message I am giving. Detailed message we are displaying. Now what is the first one? First message. It should display ng if this is what? Password dot errors. So errors question mark dot, what is the error? Required. Next one should be ng if password dot what? Errors dot what? Pattern. This is related to pattern. Now you can see here, user clicks inside the password and click outside, it says password required. And I am typing password. You can say it says at least one uppercase letter. I will show what I am typing. David 1, 2, 3. Still it shows one uppercase letter. One uppercase letter I will add. Now it is fine. Anywhere you add one uppercase letter, it will verify. These are the validation patterns. Generally, these patterns you write in HTML. This is your HTML validation. What Angular is doing, Angular is not teaching you HTML validation. Angular is just using those validations. That means without writing manually functions, already you write in HTML all the validations, it will use them and it will report those problems. So this is basic how validations are defined and configured. Now here, one more important point. This is custom validation. Custom validation means how to write custom validation. So custom validations require so event binding and JavaScript functions. Requires event binding and JavaScript functions. We need event binding and we need JavaScript functions to write custom validation. Suppose you are writing for select, say change. So on change, we say some verify city. And here we use $event. So we have an option. This option is having like value is equal to -1. It is like you choose something. That is the first one. And second option is value. Suppose daily, like this. Just one point I will give. Now what happens is, it is going to verify that. This is select. Now we need to write a method. So public verify city and into that event argument init. Now here we need to check the condition. If e.target.value is equal to what? -1. Then it will display some error. Else it will not display some conditions. Then here we have to say set error. And here we have to say remove error. That is what we need to configure. This is how we write condition. For every element, we don't define in the same way. It depends on element, depends on how you write. For example, how to write for checkbox or radio. If checkbox is not selected, then it should show a message that please select. How? For that, what we do, same change event. On change event, what is the logic to write? On the change event, what is the logic to define? On change event, we have to verify, is it checked or not? Checked property must be true or false, right? We have to verify checked. So it depends on what is the element you are using and how you are configuring the elements, right? So next important here is when you are dealing with, remember, this is all template forms. This is all template forms. Here, one more new concept you need to know is actually Angular provides, Angular also provides predefined validation classes, validation CSS classes. Angular also provides predefined validation CSS classes. What is the specialty of these classes is actually, suppose if any field is invalid, I should show in red color. That means suppose any field is invalid. If any field is invalid, I need to display in red color. If it is valid, I need to show in green color. That means I need to change the colors for the field. If any field is invalid, I need to show red. Then generally, to apply red and green colors, last session I showed you, we have to write class and we need to dynamically apply the class. We'll apply it for form now. So ng class, valid style. If form is valid, it will apply valid style. If form is invalid, it will apply invalid. That means actually it's a lengthy process. Generally what we have to do, so we have to write ng class. In that we need to write an object. In that what we have to do, so it is invalid style. When to apply this invalid style? When username dot what? Invalid. Like this you have to write. Similarly, valid style. But what is the specialty of Angular is without writing this in any element, Angular provided special CSS classes which can verify whether the validation passed or not. Without writing class means without writing this class binding, it can verify and it can report that problem. That is very good. Just what you have to do is go to the CSS file. Here you have to write these classes. What are those classes we have? So those CSS classes we have .ng invalid. We have .ng valid. We have .ng pristine. And we have .ng dirty. ng valid, ng invalid, ng pristine, ng dirty. These are the ready-made classes. And one specialty here is if you are trying to apply effects for form, then we write like this: form.ng invalid. ng invalid. And what effects you want to apply? See, if you want to write for text box and all, then you have to use input dot what? ng invalid. And you can write the effects. This is another point. That means we can configure the effects in this way. Now you can see here, now you can see without using any class binding. That means you don't need to use ng class at all. Without using class binding, classes will apply. How? You just write like this. Dot, what is it? Actually input dot what? Ng invalid. If it is invalid, then just border as 1 pixel solid and red color. That's what we are using. So if it is valid, input dot what? Ng invalid. Invalid, then it is valid, right? If it is valid, then border as 1 pixel solid and green. And you can see now it is going to display all those red colors. All are red colors by default now. Now because all are required now, and I click inside, I entered something and it is green. I am not entering. Now you can see minimum, it is red. I am entering minimum 4 characters. Now it is green. We can even put a shadow. That means I will say box shadow, 2 pixel, 2 pixel, 2 pixel, which one? Green. That means now I am typing here something and it says, so now it will be green shadow. It will display that. That is good. That is good. We can apply dynamically classes. We can configure the classes dynamically. Here, observe carefully. I am not using any ng class there. I am not using any ng class. I am not telling which class to apply. Automatically, Angular can pick up the CSS. It can verify is that CSS having any validation classes. If there are any validation classes, it will check what is the validation state. If the validation state is valid, then it will apply valid effects. If it is invalid, it will apply invalid effects. This earlier we have to manually do by writing class binding technique. But now it internally works. For form also you can write the same thing. What we have to do? For form, if I have to write, what is that? Form dot what? Form dot ng what? Invalid. If form is invalid, background color, I will just keep some red. And it is some light red I am applying for that. If the form is invalid, it will display light red color. And here the form is not having good padding, right? So here I will put good padding. Where is class? Already class is there. So padding 4. Okay. Now that will be fine. Now when I'm filling all the details with valid options. So with valid options. So with valid options and everything is with valid, then it will be normal. It will be normal. Normal, or you can put it to green color now. Background color as green. For that, what you have to do, if any one field is invalid, password is required, then it turns to red. You can apply, actually earlier we applied that by using ng class. But now you need not to define anything. Just write those classes here. They can work. This is one important. We have validation CSS classes. That makes the presentation more better while especially working with the validation. So this is all about what kind of forms? Template forms. This is an example I will give. Template form dot component dot CSS first. CSS contains all this logic. And template form dot component dot ts. So in that ts file, this is in ts file we have only custom validation. Huh? So we have only custom validation. I will copy that. Fine. Another template form dot component dot html. In HTML, let's put all this logic. This is all how we can handle validations in template driven forms. So template driven forms, their data bindings and their validations, how to deal with them. So what is the drawback with template driven? So reusability issues will be there, testability issues will be there, separation issues will be there, extensibility issues will be there. Applications are heavy, UI is heavy because everything is configured at UI level. Rendering becomes slow. But if you don't require regular extensions in a form, you want a stable functionality for form, then better go with template driven. Now, what is the alternative for this? We have model driven. Model driven or reactive forms. We have model driven or reactive forms. So the another important is model driven or reactive forms. Actually, what is a model driven forms or reactive forms? Actually, model driven specifies that all that configuration and manipulations are handled at controller level. So validations, manipulations, configuration. So configuration, everything happens at controller level. Controller means MVC na. In MVC, controller means it happens in the logic level, not in the presentation. That means it have clean separation with the clean separation between code and UI. Clean separation between code and UI. And very important is UI is lightweight and faster in what rendering. So it is good for extensibility. It is good for extensibility and testability. Testability, reusability, extensibility, all these are very easy. They are very simple. But what is drawback in this? That means it is good. So it is good for dynamic forms which can change. So which can change according to situation. That is what important. Then what is drawback? Drawback is nothing but you already learned that if your logic is in controller and your UI is in HTML and your styles are in CSS, then inline techniques, these are not good. For code behind techniques, these are good. And in code behind technique, what is problem? Initial page load time will be slow. Why initial page load time will be slow? Because it has to use a controller and a view and a CSS. Already we learned if number of requests increasing, the initial page load time will be increase. Right? That means actually what is the problem? It increases the number of requests. So, and also page initial load time that will be little not required if we want a stable functionality. Suppose we are designing inline technique, not code behind technique. That means, so it is not good for inline documentation. Because in inline documentation, everything happens in one file. If it is a code behind technique, you need regular extensions. The forms should change dynamically according to situation. Then we can go with this. Another very important is actually model driven. Another advantage is they are asynchronous. asynchronous. They are asynchronous. Asynchronous advantage is faster in interaction. Faster in interactions. And that means they internally uses AJAX. That means they enable partial postback. Partial postback means entire form is not posted. Only specific portion of form is posted. That is very, very good. That means internally they use AJAX. They are asynchronous. Asynchronous means suppose you are designing a form, and in that form, actually what happens in template approach? In template approach, the concept is nothing but, suppose you are designing a form, you are creating one form. In this form, actually, in the form we are having details like, in the form here we are having details like, suppose this is, what is the detail? This is like personal info. Okay, this is personal info. We have details like personal info. We have details like address info. So some details are there, and here we have an option submit. But actually personal info have a save. Address info have a save. That means now what happens? They can do only modification in this personal info, and they can save that. Now generally if it is a template form, what happens is when you click the save button at personal info, it saves complete form. That means what it is going to do, it will send all details. That means address details also sent and personal. That means you click the save button, it submits all details, including the details which you haven't modified. Now, what is the advantage of model driven approach? It can submit only this part. That's very good. That is what actually AJAX, asynchronous. Asynchronous advantage, it enables partial postback. That means only a specific portion of page is posted. Asynchronous postbacks, asynchronous validations also. They enable asynchronous validations, async validations. These days in interviews, people ask this regularly, means as a special point, but it is not, because sometimes people don't know the actual concept. Yes. 1 second. Yep. So here in lot of interviews recently, people ask this question like, do you know any asynchronous validation? That is not a new concept. Only just they want to check, do you know that reactive forms use validations which are asynchronous? Actually, that is not a new concept because reactive forms are always asynchronous and validations are always asynchronous. Asynchronous means what? When they are validating, they will not block other requests. Along with other requests, they can handle their own requests. Generally, synchronous means what? When they are doing one work, they will not allow to do any another. But just to make sure that you know perfectly about reactive validation, they ask like that. Have you learned asynchronous validations? Asynchronous validation is nothing but it is a part of reactive forms, or we call them model driven forms. Now, how to use this? So how we can handle these forms? Let's see. Now, what happens is everything is designed, means all the logic is present. All the logic is present in controller level. Only the UI. That means UI is very simple, very clean, and it is very lightweight. Earlier problem is UI is very heavy. Here everything is configured inside the controller level. So UI is very lightweight. It is very fast. Now for that, actually what we need is reactive forms. Reactive forms require reactive form module. It requires a reactive form module from which location? Angular forms. In Angular forms, previously we need which one? Forms module. Now we need a reactive forms module. You have to import. And actually to create a form and its elements. So it provides various classes. So we have classes like form group. This class is used for I will give class name and its purpose. What is form group actually? Form group is nothing but generally form group. So its purpose is to create form element. It is used for creating a form element. It is used for designing a form element. Another option we have like form control. So it is used to create. So input, or we have select, we have text area. Understood? All these are what? These are all form elements. We can create those form elements by using form control. Input means everything. Text box, checkbox, radios, list boxes, drop downs. They will come with input, select and all. So we have a form group and we have a form control. There is another option. We have a form builder. Form builder is nothing but actually it is a form service. And what is the speciality of this service? I will tell you. What is service? You know, service uses singleton pattern. We will discuss that. What is the point? How we can configure. So it is a form service. Form builder is a form service. So how these work, we will see. First, one by one, how to manage. Actually, to create a form, syntactically we do like this. So we create public. So FRM register. FRM register is equal to, it is using a new form group. That means we are creating a new form. And this form group is an object. This form group object contains. Now you need to define field name. What is the field name? In the form, what are the fields you want? Suppose I want some username, password, mobile, age. These are field names. Every field name is a new form control. And what should be the value in the control? And what should be the validations for that control? We have to write those validations here like this. This is how we need to create. We need to create a simple form. That means you have to define a field name. It will use a new what form control, and it has to define a value, and it should define what validations. Validations. That is how we need to configure. So now we will see. Actually, this is a simple form. There are nested forms. So there are form builders. So many. We will see them. First, let's see how to handle. How do we create? How do we configure the forms? Means creating the forms, managing the forms using reactive approach. For that, what is the first step? Let's go to app module. In app module, we need to import. Where is that forms module? Na? Here we have to import reactive forms module. We have to import a reactive forms module, and here in the imports, you need to configure. What to configure? Reactive forms module. All the modules are in imports, right? This is reactive form module. Okay, once you defined reactive form module, let's create one component. Let's add one component. I will open the components, ng generate component reactive form. Reactive form. Okay, skip test. Reactive form. Skip test. Hyphen. Yeah. So we are creating a component, and it's ready. Let's keep in the startup reactive form. Right. Now we will keep that in the startup. So reactive form. We need to define reactive form. It's working fine. Now let's go to the design. First, we need to create a form. Let's go to the page. In this reactive form TS file, here we have to import. So first, what we need to import? We need to import few things from which one? Angular what forms. We need to import here. First one is we need a form group. Another, we need a form control. Form group and form control. Now first we need to create a form. So public some FRM register is equal to new. New what? Form group. New form group. And here we need to define the details about the controls inside the form. And what are the controls? First one is what? User name. User name. It is a new form control. And for that, first I will put simple value is empty. First I will show a simple form. Then we will learn validations and all. Okay, this is empty value, nothing. Another one is suppose age. Age is a new form control. Form control. This is number because it is just a number value. Next, we have some mobile. Mobile. It's a new form control and form control, and it is again empty. It's a string type. Now these are the forms defined. Now the point is, after creating the form, how to attach this to UI? How we can attach this to the UI? So let's go to the UI now. So we need to go to the reactive form HTML. Here we need to create UI. So div, the class container fluid, and here we need to configure a simple form. I'll just keep heading as the register user. And we need to design a form now. This form will have controls. So one is what? Username. For that we are giving a input type as what? Text. Okay, I'm just giving here another term is age. So this is input type as what? Number. And so here we are having another term. What is it? Mobile. Yeah. And here input type is text. Input type is text. Earlier, we need to use name. We need to use ng model. We need to bind ng model with the IDs. So now here, form have a simple button register. Now for this form, how to bind that form? The model form. Actually, to do that, you have an attribute. We have form group. We have form group, a property form group. What is the form group name? FRM register, that is form group. And for this text box, we need to define form control name. Form control name. What is the control name in that form group? So user name. That's it. So what is the form control name here? Form control name. This is what? Age. And here, what is the form control name? Form control name. Form control name is what? Mobile. Like this, we have to define. That means we need to configure these names. We need to define these names. These are the form control names. We need to attach them. Now we will do one more. What is it? So we will use a simple. So public, that is submit click. Okay. On submit click. So we need to collect the data from the form. And I will use here data is what type? Any. I will alert that. Alert JSON.string5, whatever the data. So on submit, I need to send the data from that form elements. Now here we need to write which event? Submit. On submit, what we have to use? Submit click. On submit click, we will send FRM register. FRM register dot value. That is the form group name. FRM register dot value. Now let's run this and see here. This time it is having name, age, and mobile. And see, default age is 0. Whatever default value you mentioned, it will be there. So now, for example, in this control, you created this default value. So here say your name, something, and it is going to display that. That is the default value. I'm entering some name and I'm entering some age. I'm entering some mobile and click on this register. It should submit those details. This time it's very simple. But actually, you have to configure the form here. And remember, here UI is more clean now. In the UI, there is no lengthy configuration, just only two things: form group name and form control name. Earlier in template form, you need a name, you need a ng model, you need ID binded with ng model. And you need to write the validations also. You need to write the validations. How to deal with validations? Later I will tell you. Here now advantage is you don't need to write the validation also. That means you don't need to write the validation in UI. In the logic itself, you can tell validations. In the logic itself, you can tell the validations. That means here you can tell what is the validations. For that, what you can do is you can import another one, that is validators. Validators is a class. This validators is a collection. Yes means plural. Plural means it's an array. That means now we have to apply here. What is it? Validators. Validators is an array. In that array, what is the validation? I will put an validation as required. That is one validation. That is one validation. Suppose another validation we want, we can define another validation. So you can put a validation message here. That means you can add multiple validation. So like what we have validation, like what min length like this, max length, min length. Validations I will tell you in a separate concept. First we will learn basic form, then we will write validation. Means how to validate reactive forms, a separate topic I will tell you. Right? But here just first step, how to create a simple form and how to collect the data from the form. That's a very simple approach. That is one point. This is the first example. Then here, what is the next point? You have to bind the form group and controls to UI. This is very important. How do we do? So for form, what we have to do? We have to use form group. So here is equal to FRM register. And for controls, you have to attach any control. If it is input type text, we have to use form control name is equal to some field name. We have to define the field name. Remember, it can be anything. Even it can be a drop down. Drop down will have a form control name. Control name is equal to field name. What is the field name? You have to define that. This is how we bind the elements. This is how we need to bind the elements. So bind the form group and the form controls. Now this is a simple example. This is an example, a basic reactive form with a simple group and controls. So this is template form dot component dot. Yes, this is reactive form dot component dot ts. I will copy the code here. This is the reactive form, and we have reactive form dot component dot HTML. In HTML, we have a simple one. That is a simple presentation here. This is one example of how we can deal with forms, how we can handle the forms and how we can manage the forms, right? Next important now, generally while working with reactive forms, this is a simple form. How this form becomes asynchronous? How the form becomes asynchronous? Actually, we can create nested forms. You can configure nested forms. You can configure nested forms with async approach. You can configure nested forms using async approach. In many interviews, one important question is asked at even experience level also. In experience level also, they ask this question. Actually, now tell me, generally, in HTML, there is a body section. In this, we have one form. This is one form. It is having some controls. I am having another form, and I am defining like this in a body section. Is it valid to have more than one form in a page? Is it valid to have multiple forms in a HTML page? This is valid. There is no problem in that. You can have any number of forms in a page. Every form have its own submit. That is general basic. In HTML, you can have a page can have any number of forms. There will be a register form. There will be a login form. User can choose anything he wants. He can register or he can log in. right? There can be more than one form in a page. There is no question at all. That's a very basic thing. Now here another point is, suppose now here we are writing so body, but remember second form is not a part of first form now. It is not a part. So here we have form. So this is actually parent. Now in this we are having another form. This is child. And the child form have some details and parent form will have some details. Now, is this valid? Is this valid? This is invalid. You cannot have a form inside another form. You can have multiple forms, but there is no chance at all. You cannot write a form inside another form. There is no question. So you can't write a form inside another form. Then how you will submit only this part? Asynchronous means only that part will be submitted. Asynchronous means only that portion will be submitted. So then how you will submit only that portion if you cannot have a separate form? Actually, for this, generally what we do in a JavaScript jQuery level, we implement, actually that form is nothing but it is a div. It's a container. Understood? We cannot write a form, but we just write a div. And this div through Ajax, we can submit. Through Ajax, we can submit only that part of div instead of submitting entire form. That is the speciality of Ajax. That is how actually Ajax works. What is advantage of this is, without submitting the complete form, you can submit only specific portion of the form, but that specific portion of the form is a pseudo form. That means not really a form. It is just a HTML container which acts as a form. It acts as a form for submitting data, for fetching the data and displaying. But it is not really a form, because really a form cannot be inside form. You cannot write a form inside another form. Then you have to use this technique. So that is very, very important. So this is the problem that you face while creating nested. Asynchronous means this problem will come. Now in Angular, how you manage this? In Angular, how you configure this? Actually, what you do here is, we say FRM register is equal to new form group. A new form group is defined. In this form group, now we have to define some controls. Now what we are doing, so field, so here we define, suppose say name. Name is a new form control. So it is what type? String. Okay. Next we have like price. Price is new form control. So that is a number type. After that, we have another form called FRM vendor. FRM vendor is another form. Vendor details are separate. Who can supply the product? What is his rating? All such information is a separate form. That means product details are separate, vendor details are separate, but vendor details are related to this sub-product only. Then what we do is, this is a child form, then again new form group. In this form group, again controls now. Understood? Now in this what we do is, we define some vendor name. So vendor name is a new form control again. Form control, which is a string type. And another we have vendor rating. We have some vendor rating. Vendor rating is another form control. Another form control. So this is also some number type. How much? 4.5 something rating. This is how we created a nested form. This is how we create nested form. This is a nested form. Inside form, again a form. Any levels you can create, at every level, form is form group. But now how you will attach this? How you will attach to the UI? That means you are giving form. Okay. What is the parent one? Form. What is it? Form group. Form group is equal to what it is? FRM register. Now inside this you have fields. Fields like name, price. Input type is equal to text. What is it? Form control name. Form control name is equal to what? Name. There is another one. What is it? Input type is text. What is that? Form control name. This is related to what? Price. In that there is another child form. You can create another form. It's not possible. Then we have to define here. We have to define a div. But it should work like a form. Then we use form group name. Form group name. Form group is for parent. Form group name is for child. And form group name. What is the form group name? So FRM vendor. That is the form group name. Now this becomes a pseudo form. In this you define those controls. Controls are same. I defined input type is equal to text. Then what? Form control name. It is what? It is related to what? Vendor name. Vendor name. Like this we define. Another option. What is it? Input type is equal to some range. And this is form control name. Control name is equal to vendor rating. Rating. Like this we define. Rating. So like this we configure. This is how we define the form. And this is the child form. And the parent form ends here now. That's how we design. Now actually what happens is I can put here a submit button. Understood? I can put a submit button which will submit all the details. And if I want, I can put here a save button. I can put a save button. That means this is a button and this is what? Save. And it will have only